Hey everybody, Donna and App here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We've got folks coming in, so we'll give it a minute for folks that are queued up to come on in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. I'm already seeing familiar names and in some cases faces if I've met you in person in the past. So welcome, welcome. And again, we'll just give it one more minute and then we'll get going. All right, slowing down. All right, let's go. So first of all, Happy New Year, everybody. For any of you like me who are stuck in like May of 2021, I feel you. I don't know. It's all a blur to me anymore, but I'm always happy to turn a new page and start a new year. And this is a little bit of an annual tradition here at the Academy that we do our State of ITSM and presentation. I'm Donna Knapp. I will be your fearless leader today. If you're not familiar with ITSM Academy, we are a full service provider of ITSM related education and advice, and that includes our ITIL portfolio. We have the full portfolio of ITIL courses, DevOps, Agile, Lean, site reliability engineering. So not only IT service management, but also disciplines that are adjacent to IT service management. I am ITSM Academy's curriculum development manager, which means that I develop and maintain our course materials, but more importantly, it means that I get to learn about all this cool stuff and I get to then share what I've learned with you all. And tomorrow, I will actually add a new certification to my little list here. I'm taking the ITSM Essentials certification exam tomorrow. So wish me luck. I think I'll do okay. But I'm looking forward to adding that new. It's a new global certification. From what I understand, there are still only about 10 people worldwide who have taken that exam. So I'm looking forward to being in that list. So here we go. So when I talk about the annual State of Service Management, sorry, I realized I forgot to answer our two most frequently asked questions before I got started. So let me do that before I get started. Is it being recorded? Yes, it is. So you'll be able to listen to it again going forward if you choose to, or share it with others. And are the slides available? Yes, if not already, shortly, right? So if you were wondering, those two things. So when I do this annual report, I like to start off by just talking about the current landscape. And what I've done here is show you side by side current CEO priorities and CIO priorities. And I thought it was really interesting when I kind of was Googling around and looking for what these priorities are, that build resilience popped to the top of the list for both CEOs and CIOs. Not a surprise that they're aligned, but I think it's interesting that, you know, the topic of resilience came up that strongly at all. But it makes sense if you think about where we have been. Last year, if you're not familiar with ITSM Professor, we have a blog called ITSM Professor. We encourage you to go sign up if you haven't already. Last year, I did a blog on sustainability and resilience and what's really the difference between those two. Sustainability is really about the decisions that we make today and how they influence where we're going in the future. And resilience is really about how we bounce back from the things that have happened to us, like, maybe a global pandemic, and how we then move forward. And optimally, how we turn that into an opportunity, right? Let's make sure we've learned everything we can possibly learn from what we went through. and again, go forward based on what we've learned. And the pandemic taught us a lot. It taught us all that we can go faster. It taught us all that we're a lot more adaptable than we thought we were. So again, have we learned those lessons, and can we carry them going forward? Another thing that you see here is this notion of having the courage to reinvent. And again, that a little bit came out of the pandemic, where organizations very, very quickly realized that the way we've done things aren't going to work, whether it's our employees need to be able to work from home, or we need to have more of a digital presence. If historically we've had primarily a physical presence, we have to really be willing to reinvent, and notice that the CIO priorities speak to that. Staying aligned with what the business needs, and really understanding how today technology is playing such a transformative role in organizations' abilities to reinvent and build these new digital businesses. Pursue a net zero strategy, and here's where you see sustainability really coming into play. And sustainability and digital and IT really very much go hand in hand. In fact, we're launching a new course into our ITIL portfolio later this year that is, in fact, sustainability in digital and IT. And then notice rebuild the employee experience, really understanding that, we've gone through what is often referred to as the Great Resignation. We know that Gen X and millennials really think very, very differently about work. And so we have to figure out, right, how to create things like meaningful work for people, how to create higher trust cultures, how to ensure that we're making it easy for people to do the right thing. And you see the last item on the CIO priority list, preparing to do more with less. So how do we do that, right? How do we make it easy for employees when maybe, right, we're facing different organizational structures, maybe we're facing things like layoffs or hiring freezes, but we're still being expected, right, to kind of get on with the business and the priorities of the business. And I think that the little statistic at the bottom there, 40% of global CEOs think their organization will no longer be economically viable in 10 years' time if it continues on its current course, is ominous, isn't it? But we need to recognize that, right? That, you've probably all heard the statistics about, companies that were once on the Fortune 100 aren't there anymore. Well, that's accelerating. And so we need to recognize that companies today have to constantly evolve, or they're simply not going to be able to survive and thrive. We also really have to recognize everything that is swirling around us, right? There's a lot going on. So this is one of those situations where you can look at things either as the glass half full, or you can look at things as, the glass half empty. But it's likely that you're experiencing some of what's happening here. And Nina, for some reason, I am not able to launch the poll. Are you able to launch our first poll?
Sure, I'm happy to.
For some reason, it's not activating for me. So while Nina is launching the poll, again, this is one of those situations where, depending on the nature of your organization, perhaps depending on your industry, perhaps depending on what part of even an organization you work in, you may either be seeing the glass as half full or half empty. How you doing, Nina? Did that work?
Yeah, we have answers coming in.
Okay, poll is running. Okay, see, I have no visibility, so if you can kind of let me know as responses are coming in. For some of you, you're seeing budget increases and perhaps budget increases in focused areas within your organization. So it's likely you're seeing budget increases in one part of the organization, and you're seeing cost-cutting initiatives in another part of the organization. I think that's very normal. We've got a lot of new ways of thinking and working, advancements in technology that are all being introduced, and that's a lot of what this presentation will be all about. But again, what's swirling around us, and you certainly see the headlines today, there's layoffs, there's hiring freezes, there's resignations going on. So Nina, what are you seeing? Are audience members feeling like the glass is half full, or are they feeling like it's half empty? What are you seeing so far?
Yeah, so we're about 75% have answered, and it looks like our numbers are mostly adoption of new ways of working at 31%. And then following that is the technology implementations at 17%. And behind that is our hiring freezes at 14%. And then we have trailing off of that from there, cost cutting and back to adoption of new ways of thinking, and budget increases, layoffs is in there, resignations, probably the least. Yeah.
Good. Okay.
I'll go ahead and end it, and we'll throw up those numbers there.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, go ahead and share out. Thank you, everybody. So I'm thinking, since we're seeing a lot of new ways of working in tech, and hiring freezes even is like a glass half full view. I'm perpetually optimistic. So if it's hiring freezes versus people getting laid off, right? Let's see that as glass half full. But certainly it does speak to that need to do more with less, and understand that maybe what's happening in your organization is there have been resignations. There has been some attrition as part of that great resignation. And then hiring freezes have kicked in where the organization is maybe not backfilling those roles. So now we all need to figure out how to do more with less. So it's this balancing act that we have to really think about today. And I think this statistic from CIO report is interesting. 76% of CIOs say it's really challenging to find the right balance between business innovation and operational excellence. But it is, in fact, what we have to figure out how to do today. We have to figure out, right, how to keep the trains running on time, so to speak, keep our current business running, but also think about business innovation, whether in our business as it currently exists, or thinking 5, 10 years down the road about how the business needs to reinvent itself in order to survive and thrive for a lot of reasons, whether they be changing customer expectations, whether they may be changes to regulatory controls that are affecting your industry, maybe climate change is affecting your industry, your desire just to show and demonstrate that commitment to sustainability may be causing you to rethink a lot about how you do business. So how do we do that? Well, we have to think about people, process, and technology. Isn't that just kind of an age-old formula? And you can see from PwC's CEO survey that absolutely is what CEOs are investing today. I think it's interesting, and I'm a little bit of an admitted process geek, right? I think it's interesting that automating processes and systems is on the top and technology sits a little lower down as a priority. But quite frankly, maybe that aligns with what came out of our poll, that 31% of you said you're embracing new ways of thinking and working, and 17% of you said technology innovation. So we have to understand, it's the old adage that if you're doing things wrong and you automate them, you'll do them wrong faster, right? So really thinking about how can we optimize our processes and our systems really understand the outcomes that those processes and systems are designed to produce. And then we can think about how to apply technology. And in the middle of that, we need to be thinking about upskilling our employees. And that's constant. I feel always lucky. I'm very much a lifelong learner. When I was really very young, I was very curious. I was always willing to kind of ask why, and I was always willing to kind of acknowledge if I didn't understand something. I was always willing to ask somebody, can you explain that to me? I was never shy, right, about accepting that, it's not possible to know everything about everything. And so today, more than ever, we all need to be lifelong learners. And from an organizational standpoint, we have to look at how we fuel that, right? So what's the role of IT service management in all of this? Well, it's about developing capabilities. It's about understanding what do we need to be able to do in order to manage technology today. And here you see that there are a lot of different IT service management frameworks. Certainly ITIL is the most widely recognized of them. ISO 20000 is the international standard for IT service management. Yet another service management YASM framework, Verisum, MOF, which is obsolete at this point, but for any of you that were around in the days of MOF, was actually quite a cool little framework, and things like FitSM. So there's a lot of approaches to Agile service management, and I think the best thing we can do is leverage any and all bodies of knowledge and recognize that kind of no matter how you define it, and you may define it within your organization even slightly differently than what you see here. It is important, according to Forbes, 88% of IT executives report that ITSM is in fact important, particularly when you're undergoing a digital transformation. And you see the common elements here. Again, it's about building those capabilities. It's about establishing our practices and processes. It's about people and process and technology. And really, most important, it's about the realization of value, both for the service provider and for the customers of those products and services. So what are some IT service management trends that we're seeing? First of all, experience has been for quite a while now and continues to be a very, very strong trend. And we're talking about customer and employee experience, demonstrating business value. And that begins with measuring the right things. Historically, we've had very IT-centric metrics, and we've not necessarily focused on things like the outcomes, right? Are we achieving the business objectives that we need to, and are our customers, in fact, realizing the value, the outcomes that they want from our products and services? We tended to focus on things like, timelines and deliverables and, the quality of those deliverables, as opposed to, right, again, really focusing on what's really important, and that is results. And also making data-driven decisions and improvements, and understanding that you can make all the improvements in the world, but if you're not focusing on the right things, if you're not, thinking, sustainability has an adage, which I'm sure you've heard like through the years, that we want to think globally and act locally. If we focus too much on local optimization and we're down in the weeds focusing on improving one little part of a process or one little part of a practice without thinking about globally, right, what the impact is on our end-to-end value stream, then we're really not going to see the desired results. So optimizing everything, optimizing our value streams, optimizing our processes, optimizing our services, optimizing the skill sets of our people, and then leveraging technology. And really, again, understanding always that people and processes come first, and then we apply technology to enable those people to perform their processes more efficiently and effectively. And then taking it to the organization. taking it to the enterprise. Historically, IT service management was viewed as an IT thing, right? It only happened within the IT department. It was only relevant within the IT department. And really, even more specifically, it was an ops thing, right? Today, we're seeing concepts like enterprise service management being introduced. We're seeing more and more where across the organization, we're embracing IT service management concepts and practices. So what's standing in the way of all of that? Well, isn't this just an age-old challenge, this lack of buy-in from senior management? And I didn't get it. I didn't see you come in if you came in, but Greg Sanker, if you're out there, Greg Sanker and I have vowed that at some point this year, we're going to talk about the role of leadership and how to gain that leadership commitment and how to understand the important role that leadership plays. So I have a personal commitment to this year kind of cracking this nut a little bit in terms of how can we get that buy-in. I think that a lot of it really requires, and I think we're getting there in terms of concepts like making sure we're measuring the right things and making data-driven decisions. These are the kinds of things that senior leadership wants to see us doing. They want us to get good at articulating value and justifying things using business terms as opposed to IT-centric terms. So we have some insights into what it's going to take to get that buy-in. But again, it is really an age-old issue that has been facing us for many, many years. And oh, by the way, you'll see it come up again along the way. IT service management not having enough influence. You know, IT service management in some organizations is viewed as a little bit out of date. We sometimes hear, especially in communities like the DevOps community, where they are kind of like, we don't need no stinking IT service management. And the reality is they're doing IT service management. They're just not calling it that, right? They're handling incidents, they're making changes, they're, you know, releasing new versions of products and services. So they're doing service management day in and day out. And we have to recognize that and start to work together to figure out how best to do IT service management, again, across the enterprise. And then you see things like just inefficient work practices and lack of collaboration, lack of skills and training. And one of the things we're going to talk about as we go along are the different frameworks and methodologies that really need to come together in a modern organization. And you're going to hear me say this as I go along. The more you know about things like Agile and Lean and DevOps and site reliability engineering, the better IT service management practitioner you will in fact be. So acquiring those skills and getting that kind of training will really help you. So how are we doing with IT service management adoption? Here you see some statistics from the 2022 Axios ITSM benchmarking report. And it shouldn't surprise you, right? The things like the service desk and incident management and service request management, those really customer-facing practices have been adopted at the highest level. And really, you know, I think a lot of that is attributed to the fact that these things, by virtue of the fact that they are so customer facing, if you're not doing it well, it's going to be really, really painful for your organization. If you're not making changes successfully, it's going to be really painful for your organization. I was very pleased to see problem management and knowledge management get kind of bumped up to the top, you know, a little higher on this list. I think one of the things to recognize is there comes a time, and I'm going to use service desk as and incident management as examples. There comes a time where these may be working well for you in your organization, and you need to stop focusing on them, you know, singularly. You need to start looking at how these practices integrate with other practices. So how do we get incident management to be as efficient, as effective as we possibly can, we integrate it with problem management and knowledge management, right? So that if we already know about what's causing an incident, if we have some type of workaround that can help minimize the impact of an incident, we've got ready access to that information. Or we've got access to configuration information that help us understand that we may be seeing an application failure because we've got, for example, a server down and they're interrelated there along the way. It makes my heart a little sad to see continual improvement, just shy of that halfway point. I would love to see organizations get continual improvement up to the very top of the list, because the reality is no practice or process is ever done. It's all about continual improvement and making sure that we're constantly looking at whether our circumstances and our goals and needs are changing. And if so, then how do we improve accordingly? So when you see that needs improving column on the right-hand side, let's make sure that the improvements that we are making, again, are aligned with what's important to the business and are really going to be helping us to solve the real problems that we're experiencing. And we do that by listening to our customers, by listening to our employees, by understanding their experiences. So let's focus on the right improvements and not waste time and effort making local improvements that aren't going to have any kind of global impact. So this presentation is about ITSM. And so here you really see a lot of the frameworks that are adjacent to IT service management. And this is according to the 2022 DevOps Institute Upskilling IT report. You can see the adoption rates of these different frameworks. DevOps continues to sit at the top of the list. It continues to be something, I'm always fascinated when I look at frameworks, because you still will see organizations that are just getting started with DevOps. And then you see organizations that are beyond DevOps at this point, right? They've kind of moved on to things like value stream management. DevOps has become the way they do things around here. They don't really call it out by name anymore. They've embraced the practices. Again, they're just not necessarily focusing on implementation activities per se. Things like Agile and design thinking. And then there you certainly see IT service management continues to be very, very important. And value stream management very much on its heels. And I'll talk a little bit more about value stream management coming up shortly. I want to point out kind of a little lower on the list, lean and site reliability engineering. Site reliability engineering is kind of very, very quickly making its way up through this list. It had a very similar trajectory to DevOps, where the early adopters were, the large digital enterprises, the Facebooks, the Googles, the Etsy's, and now we're seeing it come into enterprises. So in fact, the first person who ever introduced SRE to me, and gosh, it's probably going on, 10 years now, was somebody from Home Depot, right? A large enterprise. So we are starting to see again, SRE being embraced in a lot of different ways. One of the things I think that's always important to keep in mind is that no one of these frameworks or ways of working is perfect. No one of them is complete. And the highest performing organizations are really leveraging any and all bodies of knowledge. And they're not necessarily leveraging any one of these in its purest form. And we certainly saw that with the ITIL framework, that for a while their organizations were thinking ITIL was very prescriptive and it was a set of rules that we needed to follow. And we really, over the years, have come to understand its guidance. We need to adopt and adapt it to the needs of our organization. And we need to continue to adopt and adapt it to how we're working with these different frameworks and methodologies. What IT service management looks like in a DevOps environment is in fact very different than it's going to look in, say, maybe a traditional waterfall environment. or what it looks like in an agile environment, right, is different than what it looks like in a waterfall environment. It's also important to keep in mind that there's really, and lean, I think, is a good example here where, lean is what, 50 some years old today. That, we think, oh gosh, lean's just an outdated concept, or, maybe it only relates to manufacturing environments. But the reality is, over the years, these ways of working like lean and like agile, like just systems thinking in general, right? That idea of understanding that we need to think and work holistically, have all the principles from these different ways of working have carried forward and now give us a really good basis upon which to think and work. And you see on the right-hand side that it's very much a principles-based way of working today. So trying to move away from hard, concrete policies where there's only one right way of doing things to, giving people boundaries, giving people, principles, guiding principles that they can use as they're working, and let those principles lead the way. And that enables the kind of adaptability and flexibility and agility that we really need in our organizations today. I'm a huge fan of the ITIL 4 guiding principles. And one reason is because it is, in fact, in those guiding principles that you see the integration of IT service management with lean and agile and continuous and resilient ways of working. And out on ITSM Professor, I actually wrote a blog about this where I kind of drew the comparison between these different ways of working and IT service management. You might be familiar with the 3 ways of DevOps: fast flow, left to right; fast feedback, right to left; continual experimentation and learning. We're seeing very much the flow framework as well starting to emerge. And Kneffin kind of sitting there in the middle, really that understanding that there's a time when best practices are appropriate, and there's time when experimentation is and learning is appropriate. What we have to do is figure out, see all the above, how to make it all work. But let's again keep in mind that just because a body of knowledge has been around, Agile's been around for 30 years now. IT service management's been around for 40 years now. Lean's been around for 50 years. It doesn't mean that those ways of working aren't relevant today. It simply means that we have to kind of think about what are the lessons that we need to learn from those bodies of knowledge, and then how do we carry them forward. And Deming really talked about that. I'm a huge fan of W. Edwards Deming. Deming said, experience by itself teaches nothing, right? So think about teenagers, right? They just, they constantly have to do things the hard way. They have to learn from themselves. They feel determined, right? To learn lessons the hard way. And then somewhere along the line, they figure out maybe it's a good idea to listen to my parents or my siblings or to my friends. Without theory, experience has no meaning, right? So let's understand, why are these ways of working proven? Why are they best practices? What can we learn from them? And what questions can we ask, right? Why are they in fact considered best practice? And why maybe aren't they working for us as is, given our organization's current circumstances, needs, and goals? Why do we maybe need to adapt, maybe embrace the fundamental principles of this way of working, but adapt them a little bit to our modern world? So let's just spend a minute talking about some of these adjacent ways of working, beginning with Agile. So one of the things that we've seen over the last few years is organizations have come to understand that simply having Agile in your IT department is meaningless, right? So yeah, okay, we get good at building software real fast. But if you, if the folks who are working upstream from your IT development teams are still on annual planning cycles, are still setting annual budgets, still kind of embrace the waterfall way of defining requirements, where we want to define all of our requirements up front, and then we provide them, and then you start working on them. You haven't really done a whole lot in terms of improving, right, your end-to-end value stream. So we're really starting to see that shift. You can see here 13% are introducing Agile in order to improve practices within their IT and software development teams, right? That's a very, very small percentage. We see 20% are introducing Agile for company-wide digital transformation. So they come to recognize, right, that we have to think Agile upstream from IT, and we have to think Agile downstream from IT. And I love that 61%, the highest percent, understands at this point this concept of Agile enterprise, right? We all have to be thinking and working in Agile ways where, again, we're really not going to reap the benefits. We're also seeing a shift in how Agile teams are being measured. You can see 47%, kind of that traditional on-time delivery, 44% by business objectives. So what I kind of spoke to early on is recognizing that we have to be measuring the right things. So it's not just about, are we going fast? It's not just about, are we delivering on time? It's, are we delivering those things that are most important to our customers and that are supporting our organizational goals? And you can see also this shift in how work is being prioritized. 35% are still focusing on that time to deliver. And I'm not saying speed's not important. And I'm not saying that it's not important that we do things on time, but recognizing that perhaps what's more important is that focus on value realization, on making sure we're supporting company goals, we're supporting and enabling our customers to be satisfied with our products and services. So it'll be interesting to watch, as I think this will continue to shift over time, that will really, again, learn better how to focus on value realization. When it comes to Agile, one size doesn't fit all. And this is what makes IT service management also challenging within organizations today. You can see, and this statistic came out of the annual State of Agile report. So it should be no surprise that Agile kind of sits at the top, right? In terms of, approaches that organizations are adopting. But you can see that 24% of organizations still have waterfall practices in place. And you in your organization may in fact have Agile for certain products and services or for certain types of projects. And you may still continue to use waterfall for others. So again, IT service management has to adapt to that. How we handle a process like change in an Agile environment is very, very different than how we handle it in a waterfall environment. We have to understand the need to adapt that process. As an example, given the nature of the project that is flowing from that change or set of changes. So again, it's challenging for IT service management, right? That we're seeing these different Agile ways of working. So what's standing in the way of Agile adoption within organizations? Have we spotted a little trend here already? Not enough leadership participation, right? So that theme of really needing leadership to understand how these ways of working are integrated and being able to kind of articulate how within our organizations we need to leverage any and all ways of working that are going to let us achieve our goals is so critical today. It's really, to me, the essence of leadership, that they can create that vision and not be guilty of creating the division. I think the framework wars have settled down a little bit. I'm not hearing as much, we're not doing IT service management because we're doing DevOps today. I'm hearing more and more, we understand the relationship between IT service management and DevOps, but sometimes it has been leadership, not all leaders, but some leaders who are chasing the new and shiny that have caused those framework wars. And then you can see things, again, these themes over and over again of not having the training and the education, really not having that sponsorship that we need in order to make the culture changes required to be working in an agile way across our enterprise. Agile and lean is like agile, a mindset and a skill set and a tool set. And first and foremost, it's about the realization of value. So you see here the 5 principles of lean thinking. You also see a lot of different lean methods and practices that you're likely already very, very familiar with and that continue to be very, very relevant in organizations today. The new kid in town, so to speak, that has emerged from lean and has very much its roots in lean is value stream management. I'm not going to take the time to read this definition from Forrester. It's in the presentation for you. But we're really increasingly seeing this idea of value stream management platforms introduced, especially in those organizations that have up until now maybe had disparate DevOps tool chains where they have a lot of different tools and they're grappling with how to get the data from those tools that enables us to understand the flow of work across these tool chains and across our organization. So value stream management is very much crossing the chasm, and this is from the 2022 State of Value Stream Management report. You may be familiar with Roger's work on this notion of crossing the chasm. And you see here that the innovators, the earliest adopters of value stream management are really now using these value stream management platforms to make data-driven decisions that really are enabling these organizations to propel their strategies forward. We're starting to see some organizations really rethinking their organizational structures and organizing around value streams. We see a little bit around organizations who have maybe product-centric teams as well, where they have a value stream associated with those products or services. The early majority is starting to map value streams. Now, understand that the innovators and the early adopters have really been already down this path, right? They've mapped out their value streams and they've introduced these value stream management platforms that enable them to bring those value streams to life and kind of automate the collection of data that enables them to continually monitor and manage those value streams. Again, with the early majority, they're starting to understand the value of value stream mapping. The late majority, not so much, really maybe not thinking at the value stream level yet. They're maybe thinking down at the process and practice levels. And we maybe have folks who are learning about this for the first time. And that's okay, right? We have very much a philosophy here at the Academy that there's always someone who's just getting started. What's standing in the way of value stream management? 14%. We don't have that leadership buy-in. I think what's really interesting in this particular image as well, and you can kind of look at all the different factors that are influencing, but I think that 17% have too much going on, right? I think that's fair. I mean, for those organizations that have Agile and Lean and DevOps and IT service management initiatives underway all at the same time, it can in fact be exhausting. So here's where organizational change management comes into play and really understanding again that we best serve our organizations when we understand that these ways of working are integrated and when we think and work holistically in terms of how they work together. I thought one of the things that was interesting about this particular statistic was that, again, the highest performing organizations really have already recognized the role of value stream mapping and how essential it is. but it hasn't shifted much from last year to this year. You can see, does your team use value stream mapping to obtain data about flow? Yes, 43%, no, 56%, pretty much identical to what we saw in 2021. So value stream mapping is really just now starting to emerge. ITIL 4 talks a lot about the importance of value stream mapping, both in things like high velocity IT, in the continual delivery CDS certification. So create, deliver, and support certification. Sorry, I was confusing my certs there. We talk a lot about the importance of value stream mapping. And so kind of, again, recognition is emerging of the importance of that as a practice. IT service management and site reliability engineering, site reliability adoption, again, continues to be up. And much like Agile and Lean, we are seeing where in some organizations, a smaller percentage, 19% across the entire organization, more we're seeing within specific teams or products and services, and 23% are piloting. It's very, very widely recognized as a must-have skill today. And site reliability engineers, just from a hiring perspective, are some of the most sought after individuals today. And also they're some of the highest paid folks in IT today. But again, there's no one size fits all approach. Some organizations are introducing, platform SRE teams that introduce the platforms that we use to, manage our Agile and DevOps and IT service management practices. Some are decentralizing that across lines of business. No one size fits all approach to doing things. There is a very, very strong relationship between SRE and IT service management. And I really think about SRE as modern IT service management. If you look at the practices over on the left-hand side of this slide, configuration management, release management, incident management, right? Service level management. These really are service management practices. But what SRE does is apply a technology approach to these practices. So figuring out how we can automate these practices and figure out how we can optimize them within our organization. So again, very, very strong relationship between SRE and modern ITSM. If you're not familiar with SRE, there is a SRE foundation and now an SRE practitioner course where we kind of, go into what that looks like when you modernize these practices. And then certainly DevOps. Notice that according to the DevOps Institute, DevOps and DevSecOps continue to be kind of the most widely adopted frameworks today. For now, Agile on its heels, site reliability engineering right behind it, systems thinking, value stream management, and there you see ITIL also continuing to have a strong presence in terms of what the modern operating model looks like within organizations. And again, no one of these ways of working is perfect. No one of these ways of working is complete. The most successful organizations are the ones that are really leveraging them all. This particular image is a little dated. This is from 2019, but when I was doing my research, I stumbled across this and I really thought it was interesting. And I think it's still probably a little bit true. I couldn't find where they did a current version of this. But understanding that within organizations, DevOps adoption is siloed. And we've been talking about this for a couple of years now, where it's, in some organizations, DevOps gets introduced in the dev department without any engagement from ops. In others, it gets introduced in the ops department without any engagement from dev. Neither one of them is going to work. And you can see that kind of early adoption very often is kind of coming at things from from a siloed perspective. And it's really a very small percentage, only about 20%. And again, this is a 2019 stat, has done it end to end, has really truly recognized the importance of DevOps. So what's standing in the way? Well, exactly the point that particular slide is making. I thought it was interesting. This particular statistic is from the State of Agile report as opposed to the State of DevOps report, right? But when asked what would be the most valuable improvements to DevOps teams, notice that 58% said end-to-end visibility and traceability of a business initiative through dev, test, and deployment, right? So really recognizing that siloed DevOps isn't DevOps. We have to really think about this end-to-end. You also see here the influence of value stream management, right? Understanding that end-to-end value stream and understanding the need to think about the flow of value across our organization. 55% said the ability to measure, right? Things like cycle time and wait time and the flow of value would benefit them as well. So when we think about Agile, again, remember Agile and Lean and DevOps and IT service management, they're so very, very tightly integrated. And if our IT service management practices and processes aren't being adapted to these adjacent ways of working, then we're gonna be in trouble. So where do we go from here? First of all, we challenge the status quo. We embrace the guiding principles. Again, I'm a huge advocate of the ITIL 4 guiding principles. And if you'd like a poster of the ITIL guiding 4 guiding principles, we've got one for you. We're happy to share it. We're happy to put your company's branding on it if you would like it. One of the guiding principles is start where you are, right? So start now, start where you are. Get good at baselining your performance in these different areas, and then progress iteratively with feedback and continuously experiment and learn and improve. But having said that, we can't chase the shiny and the new. We have to understand that there are proven ways of working out there. And we just need to get good at leveraging those proven ways of working. We need to get the mindset and the culture right and understand that things like being lean and being agile and focusing on value and the importance of managing products and services and customer and employee experience, right, are all part of the mindset that we need to have in place within our organization. So get that mindset and culture right. Do the basic stuff well. So learn to understand the concept of minimum viable, not only minimum viable product, but minimum viable processes as well. What are the minimum critical activities that you need to know that you're managing the flow of work, that you're controlling the flow of work in a way that you need to ensure, regulatory compliance and policy compliance, and then get out of people's way. Right? Remove the barriers that stand in the way of innovation. So figure out how you can use all these different ways of working and all the emerging technologies to free up people's time so that they can get on with innovating. Acknowledge and overcome ITSM anti-patterns. And as we've gone through this presentation, I've talked about these different anti-patterns. I've talked about these as challenges that we've been facing along the way and that stand in the way of us being successful with these different ways of working. And so we need to think about, right, and figure out how, especially some of these challenges have been around for years, the lack of leadership, right? It's a complete and total anti-pattern to think that leadership doesn't need to be actively involved in ensuring the culture change occurs and ensuring that these new ways of working become the way we do things around here. So this is something that we're going to continue to talk about this year here at ITSM Academy. How do we, in fact, overcome these anti-patterns? And one of the ways is we hone our skills. And here you see the DevOps Institute talks about the skills that we need today, process and framework skills, functional skills, technical skills, automation skills, human skills, and putting in place the education programs that are needed for people to develop these skills. I've already mentioned I'm a little bit of a process geek, so I love it that process and framework skills come to the top of that list. But notice again, human skills right on its heels. So what are the human skills that we need? Well, notice that loud and clear: collaboration, cooperation, problem-solving skills. How do we get all these different adjacent ways of working to work together? We figure out what are the problems or the challenges that we're facing in our organizations. We apply our problem-solving skills, and then we work with others in order to come up with the best solution. We communicate the results, and we be willing to share and transfer our knowledge with other parts of the organization. You know, having little pilot programs are great, but if you can't scale your successes as a result of those pilot programs, or if you're not willing to share the lessons you learned, right? And share, you know, the ways in which you failed and what you learned from that failure, then you're just doomed as an organization to repeat those failures again. We focus on continual improvement, and you see here the Deming change reaction. And Deming challenges organizations to focus on improving quality. And how do we improve quality? Well, we do things like we reduce waste, we reduce errors, we reduce delays, and we reduce effort. Some of you are experiencing cost-cutting initiatives today, and it's always important to remember that you can't necessarily tackle cost-cutting initiatives head on. When you do that, a lot of times what you do is you cut things like your innovation programs, or you cut things like your training programs. And in the long term, that's really going to negatively impact your organization. So perhaps more importantly, look at what are the contributors to those costs. Again, things like waste, errors, delays, and effort, excessive effort. Reduce those, and that will remove the barriers to productivity. So notice that Deming didn't say improve quality, reduce costs, improve productivity. Deming says if you improve quality, your costs will decrease, your productivity will improve, you will capture your market, you will stay in business, and you will provide good jobs for the employees within your organization and for future generations. So Deming actually that I have found, and if he did, somebody please reach out to me and let me know it. Deming never actually used the word sustainability per se, but he talks a lot about sustainability. He talks a lot about the fact that it's not enough to be good now, to have good products and good services. We have to always be looking at 5, 10 years from now and figuring out what's next, what are the things we need to do to reinvent ourselves, and how can we, through continual improvement, be, you know, progressing iteratively towards that next new state for our organizations. So as always, I hate when I do this. I failed to leave adequate time for questions, but Nina, are there any burning questions that came in?
I don't see any that we have any questions at this time.
Okay, I know I always like fire so much information at you that people kind of don't have even time to put in their questions. But if you think of questions, please, as always, reach out to us at info@itsmacademy.com. This is something that, again, I personally am very passionate about, things like sustainability, and I'm really very passionate about the integration of these different ways of working and helping people understand how to do that within their organizations, and again, overcome these different anti-patterns. So if this is something you're experiencing in your organization and it's something you can really, really relate to, we'd love to hear from you and kind of love to work with you on how to figure that out. Again, I've mentioned that we provide ITSM and DevOps and experience and process design and Agile and Lean and value stream mapping type education. It's something that we're super excited about. I'm really excited that this year, for the first year, I feel like organizations have kind of, the framework wars have ended a little bit. Organizations have come to accept that we need to think holistically about all these different ways of working collectively. And if you look at the highest performing organizations, you can see evidence of all these different ways of working as well. You see this very common vocabulary and this real strong mindset that embraces all of these different ways of working. So as always, we thank you very much for attending. We appreciate each and every one of you. And again, Happy New Year. We hope that you're excited about kind of everything that's going on this year. And I see some folks who are saying, yes, please provide me with a poster, and please make sure that you kind of have my email so that you can kind of send out, we'll send out a link when the recording gets put up so that you can hopefully share this with other people. And thank you to the people who said, good luck on my exam tomorrow. I do take, I am an educator, but I do take every single exam that I never stand up in front of the classroom unless I myself have taken the exam. So thank you, everybody who said good luck. So have an awesome day, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. We'll see y'all next month.